So we are here to talk about all the books I read in the month of October and all the books I'm going to read in the month of November. I've actually got a full TBR, but we'll talk about that after we wrap up October. I read, 1 second, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I read 14 books in the month of October, and that has got to be a record for me. I don't think I've ever read that many books in 1 month. We're going to dive straight in because I don't know how much I plan on rambling. Here we go. So I read It's Not Summer Without You, which is the second book. I believe there's 3 in total. The first book is The Summer I Turned Pretty, and it is now on Prime, so the first 2 seasons. This is a very summery book, and it's currently autumn, so it doesn't even feel like I've read this in autumn. It feels like so long ago that I've read this in September. Anyway, so because this is a second book, I'm not going to say too much about it. I gave it 3 stars. It's not as good as the first one, in my opinion. I did not enjoy this one nearly as much. However, it's still a good follow-up. It's still well written. I still enjoy the characters and reading about them. So I gave it 3 stars. Not much to say about that one. Next up, I read So Happy For You by Celia Lasky. And I gave this I think it was like a 3.75. I couldn't quite bring myself to give it 4 stars because I didn't love it that much. However, if you're someone that's quite easily offended, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for you. So it is about the wedding industry. We are following the POV of a bridesmaid, and she doesn't really want to be a bridesmaid for this girl that used to be her best friend. I feel like they're kind of like fake friends at this point. The main character is a lesbian, and she's very, very strongly opinionated about kind of like things to do with marriage, adoption, like gay rights, that type of thing. However, she is also quite harsh. It isn't for the fragile-minded at all, and some parts get a little bit dark. She is actually quite fearful that the bride is trying to kill her. It is a really entertaining read. I did enjoy it, and I feel like I gave it just that little bit more than a 3 star because it is very well written. It is a really good book. I just don't personally feel it's for me. I didn't feel personally offended by this. I actually found it quite humorous how sharp she was about things in general, and I do think it's a good book. It is one I would possibly read this again and consider actually annotating it. So I do think I'm sticking to 3.75 for this book. Next up, I read the last book in the Knockabout series, which is Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score, and this book I gave a 5 star. Every single book in this series, to me personally, is a 5 star. I absolutely love this series. So the last book follows the 2 brothers' friend who they grew up with, Lucian, and this one is the only one out of this series where the 2 main characters have a history together. So Lucian and Sloane. Sloane is a librarian. She's very witty. I don't know whether she's... This is one of my favourites out of the lot. However, she wasn't my favourite out of the female characters. I think the first one is my favourite couple. And this was one of my favourite stories. So every book in this series I gave a 5 star. I absolutely loved it. They are small town romance books. They are quite thick. There is a lot of story to them. They are very much story based rather than just the plot being the romance, which I really enjoyed. Romance books being this thick, to me, I look at them and I think, how could it go on that long? There has to be many breakups or something like that. But the story is just so good. I love Lucy Score's writing. These are the first books of hers that I've ever read, and I loved every single one. So high hopes for Lucy in the future. I'm getting out of breath from all this talking, you know. So next I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle, is it Gabrielle Zevin? Gabrielle Zevin. And I didn't realise another one of her books has actually become a film. However, I think it's quite a sad book. Not that this was the happiest of books anyway. This book is... I don't know how anyone could fault this book. Honestly, this is the easiest 5 stars ever. And I feel like anyone who's read this, if they've rated it any lower, then they need help. Like, what's happened? What's going on with them? I cannot explain what happens in this book. It feels like these characters are real. It feels like you're reading about people that were actually around and this actually happened to them. They are game creators and you follow them from college up until marriage, and each character like just feels so thought out, so like well written. The whole story, I could not put this down. It was heartbreaking at times. There is loads of emotions going into this. At some points I'm like, do I even like this character? Do I not like them? Do I like them? So much happens and it is just, I don't know how to talk about this book without just saying you need to read it. Next up I read My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. And I believe this is her first book. So you can guess what it's about. She moves in with somebody and her roommate is a vampire. She does find out fairly early on, and it is very funny. It is that kind of rom-com type of book. It's cute, it's funny, it's got Taylor Swift references, and they come from the vampire. So you can't just... what more do you need to know? So I gave this 4 star. I absolutely loved it. It was just cute. It was funny. It was enjoyable. I wasn't bored at all. I was entertained thoroughly throughout the whole thing. And it was just, it didn't feel silly, or maybe there was silly moments, but it's not silly in a bad way. It's just that little kind of cozy, funny, comforting read. Next I read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace, and this is the first book in the series. I can't remember what the series is called. Is it the Maple Hills series? I think it might be the Maple Hills series, and this is the first book. I loved this book. I've been putting off picking up this book. I've seen it in so many places and I was like, just doesn't really look like it's for me. Like I was being that person that judged a book by its cover, and I was a bit like, meh, not interested. I loved it. I feel like I could relate to Anastasia, the main character in this, so much. I just thought she was so well written. Like, I felt so connected to her as a character, and the characters around them I absolutely loved. It was found family. I wasn't that big of a fan of Nate, our main male character. However, the story itself was just so good. There were some very steamy moments. Some steamy moments that I was a bit like put off by. So that's kind of what's lowered my rating. Those moments and kind of the MMC. So those two things kind of lowered my rating slightly for it. But I believe I gave this 4.75. It was close to being a 5 star because I was enjoying it so much and I could relate to the character. I loved the other characters. I loved the found family aspect. I've got really into that at the moment. Really enjoyed. Next, I read Powerless by Lauren Roberts, and again, this was such a good book. So there were 3 books that I put on my TBR for October, and it was Powerless, Fourth Wing, and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And I can happily say I completed that. I read the 3 books I set myself to read. That's not, I don't know what to, I was going to say that's not that surprising. No, that's not the right way to phrase it. There is a phrase, and I'm not sure what it is. That's not that big of an achievement. That's what I was thinking. Anyway, powerless. So there are people with powers and there are ordinaries. In this kingdom, the ordinaries are killed. They are removed as the king in this kingdom believes the ordinaries are affecting those with powers. So our main character is an ordinary. She is living among those who do have powers, and she goes around like convincing people that she's a psychic, that she's a mundane, so she does have powers. And she's put into these trials of people with powers to try and win. However, the king has put her there to try and get her killed. It is great. It is an amazing, amazing first book. I don't know how many there's going to be in this one. I don't know if it's going to be a duology, trilogy, I don't know. But the ending really surprised me. Yes, my love?
It's going to show us.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
Okay. Yes, there was a lot of slow burn with the romance, and it's hard to say who she was more connected to. There was two kind of romantic options. I did want a tiny bit more of that romance in there. This was so close to being a 5-star. I think it's a 4.75 for me, to be honest. I loved it, but then I picked up Fourth Wing, and this is the perfect fantasy book. This was a 5-star. I have no words how much I loved this book. I am so disappointed in having just a plain boring hardback of this book, and it's just a black cover, and I just want some type of special edition or the paperback. I will be getting another copy of this book because I loved it so much, and I just want a different version. I just find it such a boring one. Like, it's just got the sleeve, and then underneath it's just plain black. I just find that so boring. And for it being such a good book, I know they did the sprayed edges with the dragons, and I thought I was getting that copy, and I didn't. So I want a nice copy of this book. I know Waterstones are coming out with their own special edition, so I may pick that up. I don't even know where to begin with this book. I just loved it so much. The pacing was brilliant, was so good. There are dragons. It's just... So our main character, she's been brought up to think she's going to be somebody that works in the archives, that works with writing about their history, you know, documenting it, that type of thing. However, her mother's like, no, absolutely not. You're going to be a rider. You're going in for the trials. You're going to try and get yourself a dragon. And right from the get-go, when you enter this kind of unit or whatever you want to call it, right from the start, you have a risk of death. So there are high stakes, there are dragons. People can, like, once they've connected with a dragon, they can communicate with them, they can gain like powers from them. It's so good. And the secrets that come out, it's such a good... This is, to me, a perfect fantasy book, and the second one is just coming out now, and I cannot wait. Next up, I read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and this book I did read throughout my last video, I believe. Was it my last video? I think it was. So if you want to go check that vlog out where I'm reading this book and I give little updates, there is that option. Hope you enjoy. So, The Inheritance Games took me by surprise because from the title, I believed there was going to be games and whoever wins the game gets the inheritance. No, we find out who gets the inheritance right at the beginning. However, the 4 Hawthorne brothers and our main character who has got the inheritance, the 5 of them get given letters, and there are clues in their letters as to kind of lead them somewhere that gives them another clue to lead them somewhere else. And there are kind of games in there, there are secrets, there straight away everyone is surprised who gets what from the inheritance. our main character, Avery, she has no idea why she's been put into this world, sucked in with this family, been given this inheritance. She is very confused, which also means we are all very confused. I am looking forward to the second book. I believe I gave this 4 star. I'm just going to check on my Goodreads because I can never remember these things, you know? Inheritance games. Okay, let's see. So I gave it a 4.5, which feels fair because I did really enjoy it. There were times where I was a bit like, what is going on? I don't know whether I can be bothered, but that didn't happen very often. And I loved the ending. The ending to me was just, it draws you in for the next book straight away. I don't know, I thought 4.5 is good because it's not quite a 5 star. It's lots of fun. The characters are great. I love rich people drama, and that's what we get. So next up is 5 books in one. This is the Mindfuck series by St. Abby, Stabby, if you will. So yeah, this is 5 books in one. So I read these on my Kindle. I was kind of going through and looking through a little bit of this as I went. Yeah, so anyway, I read this on my Kindle because this book is a beast. Overall, I feel like I have to give this 5 star. I feel like it deserves it. However, it's not for, like, I feel like you need to read trigger warnings because there are times where I felt sick. There are times where it did disturb me. I'm not usually one for kind of horror aspects in books, and this was a little bit scary at times. Very dark. The romance in this book is between a serial killer and a FBI profiler, and she is killing people, yet she is also helping him with his other investigations. There are so many secrets that come out throughout this. There are so many twists and turns, so many dark moments. I was like a little bit on edge reading this. However, I do believe you should look up trigger warnings if you're going to go into this. I didn't. I don't know whether that would have put me off because I'm kind of glad I read it, but I still feel a bit ill when I think about some of the things that happened in this book. I do think that this does deserve the 5 stars though. So those were all the books that I finished. I did get over halfway through of A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, and this is the prequel. This is President Snow's story before the Hunger Games happened. I'm so bored reading this. Like, at the moment, it's going to be a DNF for now. It is coming out as a movie, so I might try and watch the film and then see if that intrigues me to get back into it. But I got bored. It started off so good. I really enjoyed the beginning. I was really getting into it, and then it got to the point where I was just not interested, and I'm so disappointed because the Hunger Games are such good books, but I've got over halfway. I just don't want to pick it up. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of October. So let's just recap. We had a total of, so we had 4 5-star books. I read 2 fantasy books, and I'm really getting into the fantasy books at the moment. Really enjoyed that. I've also started a couple of series which I am really looking forward to continuing with, although yes, one of them I've continued with. I'm just thinking, I let Josh, my boyfriend, my love, pick my TBR for November. I let him pick 8 books. I was already reading a book at this point, so I have finished 1 book, but that would be my wrap up for November. I told him to pick 8 books. There was 1 book I wanted to read this month as well, and if he didn't pick it from the TBR cart, then I had to add it on as a 9th book. So the first book he picked for me to read in the month of November is Renegades, and this is by Marissa Meyer, and as you can see, I've already started this book. I am currently on page 204, so I've read a good amount of this. It is a superhero book. I'm not surprised he picked it at all. However, I'm really pleased he did. It's quite a chunky book. It's so good. So you've got the renegades, and then you've also got the anarchists. So renegades are supposedly the heroes, the good guys, and anarchists are your villains. And there's a mild politics around it, but nothing complicated. The very start, you kind of get a little bit of a backstory, a brief summary of what happened over the past 20 years. Again, really easy to follow, really simple, really well written, and then you get straight into the story. It's been so good. Really looking forward to carrying on with this. This is a 3-book series, and this is the first book. Next up, he also picked another one in a series. This is A Darker Shade of Magic by V. Schwab, and this is the first book in this series. All I know is there are magicians, and this one isn't too long. So those were the first 2 he picked straight away. One about superheroes and one about magicians. Wasn't mad about it at all. Next, he picked assistant to the villain. On the front it says one job, don't fall for the boss, and this is by Hannah Nicole Mayher. I'm so sorry, I'm really bad at pronouncing people's surnames. So on the back it says assistant wanted. Notorious high-ranking villain seeks local level-headed assistant for unspecified office duties, supporting staff for random mayhem and terror and other dark things in general. Discretion a must, excellent benefits. Sounds amazing. I got the copy from Asda, which is the pink copy, so the pages are tinted, which I love. I love the pink. It's super cute. So this is the 3rd book Josh picked. Then he picked Too Late by Colleen Hoover, as he believed you cannot go wrong with a Colleen Hoover. And the reason I'm really pleased Josh picked this is because I've been putting off reading it because I don't like the cover. Look at me being judgy. I hate this cover. I think it's terrible. However, I read Verity by Colleen Hoover. That was my first Colleen Hoover book and I loved it. So I'm hoping I love this book as well, and it gets it off of my TBR cart if I get to it. The reason I got Josh to pick my TBR is my thinking is that if someone else has picked it, I want to have read the books they've picked for me. So we'll see if I get round to reading all of these. Next up, he wanted to pick a romance. So he picked A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. I don't know anything about this apart from it's a set of 4 books. I have 3 of the books. This is the first one. He's given me a lot of series to start. So we've got a high school romance. It's quite a thick one. So we were looking at the books and he decided he wanted more than one romance. So he went for I believe this is a fantasy romance, and this is Shatter Me, the first in a series. Bit of a theme going here, isn't there? I'm starting a lot of series at the moment. I have been really excited to get to this actually. I've got so many books on my TBR cart that I'm so excited to read that sometimes I don't even know what I want to read. So this is really helping me. So on the back, it's like got parts crossed out. So like I have a curse is crossed out, and then it's I have a gift. I am a monster crossed out. I'm more than human. My touch is lethal crossed out. My touch is power. I am their weapon crossed out. I will fight back. A fragile teenage girl is held captive, locked in a cell by the Restablishment. I can read. A harsh dictatorship in charge of a crumbling world, but Juliet is no ordinary teenager. One touch from her can kill. The re-establishment wants to use her as a weapon, but Juliet has other plans. After a lifetime without freedom, she's finally discovered the strength to fight back and find a future with the one person she thought she'd lost forever. And as you can see on the back, there are lots of books in this series. I believe, so I have the first 2 and then the novella that's after the first 2. So it's kind of 2 and then a half. So I have those books so far. I love the eyes on the cover. I think this is so pretty to look at as well. So very excited again. He's picked some good ones. We've got Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Julian McAllister. How do you stop a murder when it's already happened? Now, I know this book is about a mother that witnesses her son murder someone, and she goes back in time, I believe. I think so. I mean, don't take my word for this, but I believe she goes back in time and has to figure out why he's done this. So, sounds fun. And then lastly, he picked Rogue by Mona Award. And the only other Mona Award book I've read is Bunny, and I loved that book. It was dark, it was creepy. I loved it. It made no sense, but I loved it. So it does actually say author of Bunny on the front of this. And I didn't realise until I saw someone else talking about this. This is a jellyfish. Upside down jellyfish that's making the flower. How fun is that? So I believe this is about the makeup industry and how dark it can be. I know our main character's mother is obsessed with the makeup industry. I don't know whether her mum... Yeah, so her mum mysteriously dies, I believe. But I know that the daughter kind of goes into this makeup world and it's darker than expected. And I'm looking forward to getting to this book. This book I bought at the airport, which is why Josh picked it. So that's super fun. So we've got a really good, exciting range of books to read in November. And then he did not pick the book that I wanted to read in November. So I have 9 books to read. And the last one is 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. And this is over a span of 8 hours, 6 friends, 1 sniper. And I believe, I don't know if they're camping or they're somewhere, and it's over the span of like those hours. This is the same author as Good Girl's Guide to Murder, so I really wanted to get to this month, so I've added this onto the TBR myself. So I have 9 books to get through. I've already got through 1, so not in this set, so 1 separately I finished before going to the TBR. So if I finish all of these books, I would have read 10. Yes, so we'll see if I could get through 10 books this month, especially because we're already on the 8th of, are we on the 8th of the month? No, that's wrong. I'm looking at my calendar and it's still on October, so I don't know what day we're on. I believe the 7th is Tuesday because that's when I was going to post this video. So we're on like the 5th. So if we're on the 5th, I've got a full month to get through 10 books. Can I do it? That is the question. I'm really looking forward to reading these books. I'm super excited. I was also going to do a haul of all the books I've recently purchased. Although I mentioned I was on a book buying ban, ignore me. That never happened. That's just non-existent, even though Josh tells me I'm still on it. It's non-existent. So a haul may be coming as a separate video. I hope you have a super duper good one. Please let me know if you've read any of these books or if any of them interest you. I'm so pleased with how my reading is going at the moment. I have read some really great books this year. I've found some new favourites. I'm just obsessed with everything book right now. I hope you have a super duper good one. I've already said that. Have a good morning, afternoon, day, evening, night, whenever you're watching this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.